The Krevathi delegation had seen 11 species surrender before their fleet arrived in orbit. 11! It was practically a formality now, a ritual dance before the inevitable capitulation. Ambassador Vex Tholin had personally overseen 4 of those surrenders, and each one had followed the same script. Initial defiance, a demonstration of overwhelming force, and then the quiet, dignified folding of a civilization that understood arithmetic. He expected nothing different from the humans. His shuttle descended through the thin cloud layer above Meridian 9, the humans' largest orbital station, flanked by 2 honor guards and ceremonial plating that cost more than most human nations' annual budgets. Below them, 400 Krevathi warships hung in high orbit like a slow-turning crown of knives. It was, by design, the most terrifying sight most species ever witnessed. The shuttle doors hissed open onto a docking bay that smelled faintly of machine oil and, inexplicably, cinnamon. Vex Tholin straightened his ceremonial collar and stepped out, expecting trembling diplomats, perhaps a delegation on their knees, perhaps weeping. Instead, he found a woman leaning against a coffee cart, sipping something dark and steaming, watching his 3-meter-tall honor guard with the mild curiosity of someone examining a new species of pigeon that had wandered onto her balcony. "You're late," she said, not looking up from her cup. "Briefing was supposed to start 20 minutes ago." Vex Tholin's translator crackled, struggling to render her tone. Casual, unbothered, wrong.
"Before we begin," he said, "I should inform you that our fleet numbers 400 warships in this system alone. Your planetary defenses have been noted. They are, to be direct, insufficient." "Sure," Amara said, settling into the chair across from him and pulling her knees up. "You mentioned that in the opening transmission. Twice, actually. Very thorough. Also, you sent it in triplicate across 3 separate frequencies, which was a nice touch, redundancy-wise. You do not seem concerned. Should I be?" 400 warships, Vex Tholin repeated, slower this time, as though volume might help translate the concept of impending annihilation. "Each one capable of rendering this station, and every population center on your homeworld, into debris within the hour." Sure, Amara waved a hand fakely. "Big ships, got it. Marcus, you getting this?" The juggling man, Marcus, apparently, didn't look up from his tablet. 400. Yeah, writing it down. Very scary. Vex Tholin's antennae twitched, an involuntary tell of confusion that he immediately regretted, since he'd spent decades training it out of himself in front of lesser species. "You do not appear to be taking this seriously." "Oh, we take it seriously," Amara said.
Vex Tholin sat in silence for a long moment, running calculations his translator couldn't fully convey. The particular, specific math of a predator realizing mid-pounce that the ground beneath it had quietly rearranged itself while it wasn't looking. He thought of the 11 species before this one. He thought of how each of their surrenders had felt in the moment like the natural conclusion of an obvious equation. Overwhelming force presented, overwhelming force acknowledged, terms accepted. He had never once, in decades of service, considered that the equation itself might be the thing under negotiation. "If what you say is true," he said carefully, "you have had the capacity to disable our flagship for months. Why has the Dominion not been informed? Why negotiate at all, rather than simply neutralizing the threat?" Amara softened, just slightly, the sharpness receding back into something almost kind. "Because we don't actually want a war, Ambassador. Truly. Wars are expensive, they're ugly, and honestly, humanity's had enough of them among ourselves to know exactly how bad an idea starting a new one is. We'd much rather you go home and tell your superiors that Sol System was surveyed, found to be more trouble than it's worth, and quietly written off. Nobody needs to die today. Nobody needs their reactor to become a very strongly worded suggestion in the history."
3 days later, the Krevathi Dominion's official survey records were quietly amended. Sol System, once flagged as primed for incorporation, was reclassified as Recommend Indefinite Observation Only. Resource allocation not advised. No official reason was given in the report that reached the Dominion's High Council. Several junior analysts who asked too many pointed questions about the flagship's reactor logs during the debrief found themselves reassigned, with surprising speed, to increasingly remote and unglamorous postings along the Dominion's frontier. Ambassador Vex Tholen filed his final report personally, choosing his words the way a man diffusing something chooses his footing. He described the humans as culturally resistant to standard incorporation protocols and possessing defensive capabilities inconsistent with their technological classification, warranting further study before any renewed engagement. It was, he reflected, the most honest, dishonest sentence he had ever written. He did not mention the coffee. He did not mention